Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our members post-election briefing. We really appreciate you joining us here today. We have a special guest with us. We have Congressman Jamie Raskin representing District 8 of Maryland. And we have a really good agenda today to get through. And we have some really good guests who can kind of break everything down for you. So with that, I'd like to first introduce our first guest, President of People for the American Way, Ben Jealous.
Thank you, Gina, and thank you everybody for joining us. What a great day. You know, the news will catch up with us, but let me just tell you, it's certain, Donald Trump has been fired. There's just no other way when you look at all the numbers. And we have People for be clear on this now for a couple of days. Dig into it, the organizing we've been doing across the country, the way we've been tracking this, there's only one possibility. I want to really praise my good friend, longstanding, Stacey Abrams. Stacey and I have been friends since we were 20 years old. We organized back then to stop the governor of Mississippi from turning a black college into a prison. We won that battle. And I've known since then she'd be the first black governor of Georgia. And in 2 years, I'm pretty sure we'll be calling Stacey governor of Georgia. She just delivered Georgia for the Biden-Harris ticket in a profound way. I want to thank everybody who's already thinking about how we win again in Georgia. January 5th, there'll be a special election in Georgia. We've got to win that twice. Ossoff and Warnock. Looks like both are headed into a runoff. We win both, and Kamala Harris becomes the 51st vote again and again in the U.S. Senate as we just eke out a slim majority, the vice president weighing in. And so we've just got to finish the job from this election, and that means that we lean in Georgia. If you're interested in helping with Georgia, you can go to our website, pfaw.org/wingeorgia. There's a survey there, and sign up to help with fundraising for the effort, sign to help up with volunteering, texting, making phone calls. I want to thank everybody on here, by the way, who helped with what we just did. People for the American Way texted more than 3 million black male unlikely voters. It was every black male unlikely voter under 50 for whom we had a cell phone number in 25 states. 90% opened their texts, and 10% of those asked for help. And I'm sure that what we'll see is that it resulted in hundreds of thousands of new voters, or folks that wouldn't, are likely to have not voted. Black male vote is critical, will be critical for Warnock. That was a nonpartisan effort. Obviously, with Warnock, everything will be partisan. What we know is that Stacey would be governor right now if black men turned out in Georgia in the same percentages as black women 2 years ago. And so we got to make sure that the black male vote is up, specifically in this Georgia special election, in a dramatic way. We'll be running a similar operation. That's the type of thing you can support if you go to pfaw.org/wingeorgia. And please put that up in the chat to make it easy for folks. Now, thinking about the country as a whole, what I would say is this. What's been ringing in my ears these last couple of days is with the words of my old friend and mentor, Julian Bond. Julian Bond would always say, Ben, ABC, 1, 2, 3. The ABC was always the same. Always be cool. Always be cool. Julian Bond was the essence of cool. You had him as a professor at American University, where Congressman Raskin also taught. You knew that. If you worked with him, you knew that. You saw him walking over in Chevy Chase, DC, to the Starbucks. You knew Julian Bond was cool. ABC, always be cool. 1, 2, 3 was just the plan of the day. Let's keep it simple. Let's stay focused. And the plan here for us at People for the American Way in this election season, thinking nationally beyond Georgia. 1, turn out every vote. 2, make sure every vote is counted. 3, make sure every vote truly counts. We've accomplished number 1. We've turned out massive amounts of voters, and thank you to everybody who supported that work. Thank you for, movements take work, wealth, and wisdom. Thank you for contributing one or all of those. Step 2 we're in right now. We're making sure every vote is counted. And when every vote's counted, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris will be the winners. You can take that to the bank. Step 3, we really start building for right now. In some ways, we've already been building. And the Maryland delegation to the US Congress has really played a leading role. Jamie Raskin, who's with us tonight, John Sarbanes, incredible advocates for democracy reform legislation. We here at People For, which is led by 2 Marylanders, myself and Marge Baker, are deeply committed to making sure that democratic reforms are passed, because nothing else really works right until we get money out of politics, until DC is a state, until the John Lewis Voting Rights Restoration Act is passed. And once they are, then it won't be so hard for folks like Stacey Abrams to turn out every voter in a place like Georgia. I talked to Stacey the morning of the election and I said, "What's on your mind?" And she said, "Ben, I've had volunteers headed to every single polling place in Georgia." Stacey had volunteers at every single polling place, not the Georgia Democratic, Stacey Abrams operation, volunteers at every single polling place in Georgia. Why? Because armed militias were threatening to show up at any polling place in Georgia, and they wanted to be prepared. And so that's where we're going to need your help. And that's where our long-standing symbiotic relationship with Jamie, with John, so important. Kwesi, even the whole delegation, but they've really been out there for years on democratic reforms in a very powerful way. Right now, that's known as HR 1, a big omnibus bill, get money out of politics. HR 4, John Lewis Voting Rights Restoration Act, HR 51. This moment, the next 2 months, we're going to have to walk and chew gum. It's the last thing I'll say. We're going to have to win Georgia. 2 senators takes us up to 50-50, Democrats, Republicans. Kamala Harris becomes the deciding vote in a number of instances. And we're going to have to get ready to push hard and get through as many democratic reforms as we can to make sure that we safeguard our democracy. In the states, People For, you can count on us to keep pushing for national popular vote. We believe we can win that in Virginia. We can win it in Nevada. We're going to need people's help from across the country to get that done. It's so critical because the moment we do that, again, turn out every vote, count every vote, make sure every vote counts. The moment we have national popular vote is the moment that every vote truly is counts in this country in a major way, and everyone will be competed for. It's almost like an afterthought when a Democrat wins the popular vote again. And it just happened again by a massive landslide. And that's really all that should matter. We shouldn't have to go through the kind of soul-wrenching anxiety of this weird electoral college process when a candidate is so overwhelmingly won the votes of the American people. It's my pleasure now to welcome the esteemed congressman from Maryland, the great defender of the US Constitution, the great prosecutor, along with the late Elijah Cummings, of Donald Trump and his many sins against the American people, high crimes and misdemeanors, Jamie Raskin.
Ben, thank you so much for having me. It's such a thrill to be with my friends at People For, with you and with Marge Baker and everybody that I've worked with for a really long time, long before I ever dreamed I was going to be in Congress. I was a senior fellow at People For and standing up for precisely the values you just articulated. People For has been the great defender of the civil rights and civil liberties of the people, but also of progress of our democratic rights and democratic processes in the country. And that's what we really need to start working on now, while it's fresh in people's minds. I mean, you know, we've, in the last 6 presidential elections, including this one now, the popular vote loser won in the Electoral College. We've had all kinds of strategic mischief and corruption through the Electoral College. And I think this most recent election was a tutorial in a lot of the severe problems of the Electoral College, such as the fact that it concentrates the whole election immediately on 5 or 6 states and leaves the rest of the country out of it because they're safe red or they're safe blue states. So People for has been in the forefront of that struggle. The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, which I am proud to have introduced when I was in Maryland, and Maryland became the first state to pass it, now has 16 states aboard in the District of Columbia. So we are much more than halfway there. We're almost at 200 electoral college votes. We need 270 electoral votes represented in the coalition. But the compact, as you know, Ben, simply says that we in the states will cast our electors not for the winner within our state, we'll cast our electors for the winner of the national vote. And when we have enough states equal to 270 or more in the electoral college, then it will be operative every time. And so this will be the bridge to get us out of this really antiquated and obsolete system. And then, Congress will do the right thing and catch up and pass a constitutional amendment. That's basically how we've always amended the Constitution with respect to voting rights, like the 19th Amendment, whose anniversary we celebrate this year for women's suffrage. That was passed in 1920 only after dozens of states had said, we're going to extend the right to vote to women in our state constitution or just in state law. And it was the same thing with the 17th Amendment, taking the right to appoint US senators away from state legislatures and give it to the people. Before that was put in the Constitution in the 17th Amendment for popular election of senators, many states did it first. And so we're just doing the same thing with the national popular vote. We're saying the states will get together. We will cast our electors for the winner of the national vote. We'll see that it works in 1 or 2 elections, and Congress will finally catch up to where the states and the people are. But as you're saying, that's just the beginning of a democracy reform movement that we need to get going now. We've got 700,000 disenfranchised Americans in Washington, D.C. We are the only democratic country on earth where the people of the capital city are locked out of the national parliament. We are the only one. We've got 3.5 million people in Puerto Rico. Also, draftable citizens, American citizens who saw what it means to have second-class citizenship when they were waiting for hundreds of millions of dollars of aid in Hurricane Maria, and they got a bunch of paper towels instead thrown at them by the president. And so, the same thing happened to people in DC with COVID-19. They were not treated as though they were a state. They should have been treated that way, but the Republicans made sure they were treated like a territory, and they lost $750 million in COVID-19 relief. At the same time that the president is throwing super spreader parties to celebrate their most recent gerrymandering of the Supreme Court. So we got a big agenda to work on here. Obviously, winning the Senate will make all the difference in the world. And without that, we got to keep on building these popular democratic movements that have always been our base and our salvation.
Amen. Amen. Jamie, what has it been like to be in the U.S. Congress? What gives you hope? You've been there in the era of Donald Trump. You've been there in the era of gridlock. It's got to wear on your soul just a little bit. We grew up knowing about Truman going off in Congress, calling them a bunch of do-nothings because they passed less than 1,000 bills. That would be like a high watermark. So, you're such an incredible visionary activist and leader. You were so incredible in the Maryland legislature. What gives you hope going to work in the U.S. Congress every day?
The truth is, what gives me hope is the people that I work with who are truly extraordinary, the people getting elected to office from around the country. And obviously, we've had our great senior statesmen and stateswomen like the great Elijah Cummings, whom I know you were close to and who chaired one of the committees that I serve on, and John Lewis, of course. But the people getting elected now give me great hope. Lucy McBath, who just won re-election in Georgia, she won that seat that John Ossoff had originally run for and had narrowly lost it. She ran, she'd never been involved in politics before, but her son was killed by gun violence. And she said that she'd had enough. And she has become, and she got elected. She beat Karen Handel. It's a tough Trumpian district, but she's such an amazing spokesperson for the basic idea of the social contract. What kind of social contract do we have if we've got truancy laws that compel kids to go to school, but then we allow maniacs to go out and buy, a semi-automatic assault rifle and go and break into a school and shoot everybody up? And, we have seen over the last decade, these kinds of spectacular attacks on churches, synagogues, mosques, Walmarts, elementary schools, bars, discos, town squares, movie theaters, you name it. And that's not even to get the daily toll of gun violence that we see in cities, suburbs, small towns across the nation. But anyway, Lucy McBath is somebody who'd never been in politics before. She gives me so much hope in that she's willing to learn everything about government, about the process, about the issues, and to distinguish herself in the impeachment hearings and to distinguish herself as a leader for gun safety reform. I just pick her, almost at random because George is on my mind today. But it's people like that from all over America who are doing such an extraordinary job. They give me great hope, Ben, about where the country's going. I know the Republicans are already at each other's throats about what's happening to their party, and are they going to be a Trumpian party, or are they going to go back to something else or something different, or are they going to cease to exist? I hope that the Democrats don't turn on each other in what I think are mostly imaginary conflicts between progressives and moderates. I've really never seen the party more unified around strategies for progressive change in the country. And that's what matters. And a lot of it, I think, is just purely rhetorical differences and the things that get thrown at us. In my campaign, my Republican opponent in 2020, not 18, the guy from 18 left the Republican Party and endorsed me. And so there's a real faction of Republicans who are coming our way. But the guy I ran against is an outrageous Trumpian who said in several debates that I belong to a pro-communist party. And I said, that's fascinating because it's your leader, Donald Trump, who's in love with Vladimir Putin, the former head of the KGB. And it's your leader, Donald Trump, who's praised 37 times the chairman of the Chinese Party Central Committee, President Xi. And it's your guy who's in love with the dictator of North Korea. If there's a pro-communist party out there, it's your party, not my party. My party believes in democracy. That's what we're trying to save from you guys. So, I think that we've got to, people get intimidated by the outrageous rhetoric of the other side, and we shouldn't be intimidated by it. And we shouldn't be scared to have debates about big questions of public philosophy, because when you look at the sweep of American history, we are on the side of the progressive change that America needs.
Amen. Amen. Well, talk to us just about strategy, about, folks want to have hope that if we win these 2 Senate seats, we can get some things done in Congress. What do you see from the inside would be the impact if the Democrats had a 51-50 majority, if you will, in the U.S. Senate?
Well, Ben,
Harris,
we don't have to guess about it. You know why? Because there's a stack of 600 bills sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk right now. You name it. Bill to strengthen the census, bill to strengthen the post office and to rescue the post office from the deep politicization by the Republicans, bill to end gerrymandering in America, bill to dramatically lower people's prescription drug prices by giving the government the authority to negotiate with Big Pharma with respect to the Medicare program. We can negotiate for lower prescription drug prices in the VA, and we can negotiate in the Medicaid program, but we can't negotiate in Medicare. Why? Some Republicans, during a period of Republican control, slipped in a special interest rider, and that's costing the American people $35 or $40 billion a year. So we are advancing a legislative program that has really been, I don't want to say perfected, but it's really been developed well in the House of Representatives that's ready to go. I mean, that's what's so exciting to me about this. It's not going to take us 2 years to put the big stuff forward that we need to do. It's there. And so, the democracy, structural reform issues that are so close to my heart, that are so much, at the heart of what you guys are doing at People For, also really have to be on the agenda because, like Dr. King said, what gives people the power to make improvements in their life is the vote and an effective political process. So we're not going to be able to get everything right for everybody in terms of healthcare and education and climate change and the environment today. We'll do whatever we can. But if we put the structures in place that allow majorities to win and govern, then we're going to be all right. Then, we can move off one day into retirement. And, if we ever get grandchildren, we'll get to enjoy our grandchildren and we'll get to see future generations do it. I think what gave John Lewis and Elijah Cummings and so many of our great heroes, including Ruth Bader Ginsburg, so much angst at the end was not knowing whether the democratic structures and processes would survive. And this election has given us a chance to make sure that not only they survive, but that they continue to develop so that future majorities can govern in a meaningful way.
No, amen. Jim, my grandma, who's a retired social worker, she turns 104 in a week.
Wow.
She trained a much younger social worker named Barbara Mikulski back in the day. And my grandma, it's funny, she doesn't waver about the strength of American democracy. She was born during the rise of Jim Crow. Her grandfather had been was born a slave. It became a member of the state legislature in Virginia. She obviously mourned the rise of Donald Trump and the demise of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. But, I was talking to her about it the other day, and this 104-year-old lady who started off as a farm girl in Virginia, Ben, just think about it for a second. There's been an old order of racial privilege and gender privilege that is coming to an end in this moment. It's 400 and something years old, and in less than 25 years, our country will be a nation of minorities where every other group's going to have to get along demographically with at least one other group to succeed democratically. And that scares some folks. A lot of folks welcome that, of all colors, but it scares some folks because they want to hold on to the old order as long as they can. My theory on the Koch brothers is they're just trying to hold on to it till they die. She says, and you would expect that the far right wing, when they were backed into a demographic corner, at the end of 4 centuries of an order defined by racial privilege and gender privilege, if it was just all that was going to end, like was in our life, talking to me in your lifetime, you would expect them to act like a fox backed into a corner. A fox is a meek, mild-mannered character that eats mice. Well, you back it into a corner, and it's a whole other beast. But on the farm, we never got worried about a fox backed into a corner because we understood that the fox understood what we understood, which was that the whole world was about to flip on that fox in a way that the fox was not prepared for. And so I would encourage us to just have faith in the people of this country, have faith in our democracy. It has survived worse. It will survive worse. And just do what good organizers and good activists do, and what you, Jamie, have done your entire career, which is to simply make a better future come faster. Simply make a better future come faster. One of the things I love and respect about you, Congressman, is that every summer is Freedom Summer in your office. You're always training young people to be great organizers. And I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon with our members and supporters. You got any final words, any final thoughts?
Well, I'll close on that thought, Ben. Thank you for your super kind words and for the moral uplift of what the story you just told about your grandma. The reason that I gravitate so much towards People for the American Way, of all the great groups we've got out there, is because you guys really do put education at the center of it. And that's really my theory of politics too, that at its best, politics is really about education. It's teaching people about the process. It's teaching people about the issues. It's teaching people about what's possible, what we can make happen. And so I'm looking constantly to the new generations. And I'm looking to my kids. I'm looking to your kids specifically. I'm looking to all the young people that I know around here. They've got a high burden of hope on them. They are the heirs to the great civilizing movements of our times, the civil rights movement and the women's movement and the LGBTQ movement, the environmental movement, the human rights movement, the civil liberties movement, the labor movement, all of it. They are the heirs to that, but then they have a whole set of challenges that they've got to deal with that are completely unprecedented, like COVID-19 and accelerating public health catastrophes and climate change. We have to teach them everything that we know, and we got to get them ready, and we've got to do everything we can to use science and knowledge together with people's sense of empathy and democratic community to make progress, even while we're dealing with all of the old monsters of racism and anti-Semitism and sexism and all that stuff. And, I would just say to the young people, they've got great values. They've gotten beyond all of that stuff. They've gotten beyond the prejudice and the bigotry. Unfortunately, they've gotten a little bit beyond grammar too, but that's a different problem. But basically, they are poised to take us someplace different. And that's why every election is going to get bigger and better for us, and it's going to create more hope for the country. And I just want to be there with the young people when they're able to create an America that is better than anything that anybody ever saw before.
Amen. 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 Well, love you, appreciate you, and look forward to working with you to find ways that we up here can help folks in Georgia win.
Thank you, Ben Jealous, and thank you, Marge Baker, everybody at People For. Stay close, and much love to everybody there.
God bless. All right, with that, I'll turn it back to the incomparable Gina Kim.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was great. And for those who are joining late or just joining us now, you are watching People for the American Way post-election briefing. And if there's some way you want to help out in Georgia in the upcoming most critical, the races that are coming, the Senate races, you can go visit pfaw.org/wingeorgia. That's pfaw.org/wingeorgia. And there'll be different ways you can volunteer, phone bank, fundraise, but get involved and let's win Georgia. So with that, and also, I would also like to thank Uphill Media for helping make this stream event possible. Again, that's Uphill Media. Thank you so much for doing this for us. So our next up guests are PFAW's Senior Director of Field Mobilization, Diallo Brooks, and our Political Director, Lizet Ocampo, to kind of brief you on what we've done for this election cycle. So I'll hand it over to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Gina. Excited to be here. It's an amazing conversation with Jamie Raskins, Congressman Raskins, always inspiring. I will talk a little bit about our Defend the Black Vote program that we ran this year. At the top of this presentation, Ben mentioned this program, and I want to give him definitely a shout out because it was really his vision of engaging during this critical moment. It was really his vision coming into this organization around making sure that we put our assets in the right baskets in order to have a deep impact on communities that are traditionally not engaged during this election or in many elections. And so we targeted Black men, 50 and under, 18 to 50-year-olds, that tend to be marginalized voters that we knew that we needed to push out during this cycle. It was a nonpartisan campaign. And what we did is we utilized a peer-to-peer texting program that allowed us to have personalized contact with these voters, personalized contact in ways that we help to dismantle some of the disinformation that's been out there, making sure that they had the access to the right information around polling places, around drop boxes, for mail-in ballots, how to mail in their ballots, and also reinforcing, making sure that their signatures were correct, making sure that they followed all of the rules in their particular state and their particular jurisdiction, so they were able to participate in this election. It was critically important. We had some amazing conversations with folks that thanked us. As Ben mentioned, there were folks that were returning citizens that weren't sure that they could vote. And so us giving them answers in particular states around the country. And like Ben mentioned, we sent out 10.5 million texts, touching 3 million voters. So touching voters multiple times with multiple reminders, with multiple tools of support, and to dismantle any misinformation that was out there as well. So it was an incredible program. It was incredibly exciting to be a part of this program, to really engage folks in 25 states around the country. Half of the country, we were able to tap into Black men around the country. And we also coupled that with telephone town halls in target states around the country as well. So we are also hitting those voters with town halls that brought in leaders from their own community to talk about the importance of voting. We also did ads to those same voters as well to encourage them. We had an amazing PSA that Gina helped pull together that reinforced the energy around voting. And also we were able to engage our ministers network and our young elected officials network in helping us to engage voters. So it was an exciting program. It's something that we look forward to utilizing the tools from that program in other programs that we do going forward. We will be doing that work going forward, and we have a lot of lessons learned from that, and we'll be able to engage more people going forward.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, Diallo, just to jump in for a second, one of the things that we proved, and it's important when you're an organizer to run experiments, figure out what works, what doesn't work. And this was a massive thing for 25 organizers and some volunteers to be able to touch about 3 million voters. Over 3 million, have 90% of them open up and engage. 10% of them ask for questions. You're doing this with 25. It just has real implications for organizing going forward here at People for what each of you will be able to be part of in Georgia. That was all a nonpartisan experiment. On the partisan side, we will absolutely be reaching out to specific voters in Georgia via text, and it's way more powerful than you doing a phone bank. You'll be able, Diallo, what was the high watermark for your 25 organizers and the volunteers in one day as far as text sent?
I think one organizer actually got up to over 50,000 texts in one day.
Yeah. Again, it's a 90% open rate.
Yes.
So this is what we're inviting you to stay a part of a People for, to become a part of a People for, really on the cutting edge of having a high impact, because we weren't just going after any voter. Those were all voters that were specifically chosen because they didn't show up in 2016. And we needed to make sure that they showed up this year. And thousands upon thousands of them having conversations with our organizers, getting information, over 250,000 of them getting information about how to vote, when to vote, where to vote. Oh, I can still register. So thank you, Diallo. Truly heroic effort. Diallo and his team reached every single Black male, unlikely voter under 50 for whom we had a cell phone number in 25 states. Incredible. Incredible.
Thank you, man.
Next up, we have his partner in politics, our great political director, Lizet Ocampo, born and raised as a farm worker. He's become one of the greatest organizers in the country, especially when it comes to turning out the Latino vote, the Latinx vote. Lizet Ocampo.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be with you. And I'll share a little bit of what we've been doing in the political department, mainly focusing on our independent expenditure programs. So the work we did independent from the campaigns. And I'll go into our Latino Vote program. Before getting into that, I just want to do a quick mention on a couple other programs we had going. We had our Next Up Victory Fund program, which helps young progressives win state and local office. And we had a lot of victories across the country. We had 80 victories across the country. Some races are still being called. And these are, again, state and local candidates focused on young progressives. We also launched a slate of candidates focused to stop police killings. And we endorsed 101 candidates for that. They all committed to different policies of ways of addressing the issue that we have been seeing. And 45 have won so far. And there were notable flips. Some of our candidates that I'll mention are some highlights from that slate. We had Jevin Hodge, who flipped a seat in Maricopa County, and Whitney Walker, who also flipped a seat in Maricopa County. And that's notable because we did a lot to help them win. Not only did we endorse them and donate to them, but we ran radio ads in their area. We also did digital ads, sort of OTT they call it, which is ads that people watching Hulu, for example, will see. And we also were on podcasts as well. So we did a lot to help them win there. And we did that also with some of our candidates in the Atlanta area, and we're still waiting to hear back on some of those results. But we had incredible candidates, both that flipped seats and that also won seats that maybe weren't as competitive in the general, but we helped them in the primary. So for example, Brandon Scott, who will be the next mayor of Baltimore, is one of our star candidates from that. So I encourage you to take a look at our website, pfa.org/nextup, to see some of these incredible candidates. You know, for example, Jevin Hodge is going to be the youngest, first Black American elected to that position. And, you know, Black male. And then we have Whitney Walker, who's the first Black female, Black woman elected to that position. So incredible local candidates. And then we also had a new program focused on Black voters on the C4 side. And this was running ads on radio. And so we ran ads in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania for that program. And that's also a new program. We worked with a lot of iHeart radio stations, and we're really excited that we got that off the ground. Going into our Latino Vote program, this is the 10th year we're running that program. As Ben mentioned, Dolores Huerta is the founder and leader of that. Dolores Huerta, who started the United Farm Workers with Cesar Chavez and is on our board. We did a lot of incredible events with her, Zoom virtual events. We're usually on the road with her. And we had the Dolores Huerta One Vote at a Time virtual bus tour. When we stopped in 6 different states, had 7 different events. And we called it One Vote at a Time because we had members from the show One Vote at a Time, which is a television show produced by Norman Lear, One Day at a Time, that's on Netflix. And it's the only show, or was on Netflix and now is on network television, the only show with a Latino family on network television. And so several of the actors and cast members participate in this tour, as well as another one of our board members, Cristela Alonso, who is a comedian and was the first Latina to have her own television show. And it was incredible. We had a lot of positive responses from the local organizations there. And then that earned media side complements our paid media. Our paid media for our Latino Vote program focuses on Spanish language media for the most part. We do Spanish language TV, radio, digital, mail where needed. We notice that oftentimes Spanish language TV and radio isn't part of state plans or is left till the last minute. So we make sure that we do that work. And as I mentioned, this is our 10th year doing that. The program actually started in Wisconsin. So we were back in Wisconsin again. We were in a total of 10 states. And I want to highlight a few of the work, a little bit, some highlights of the work that we did there. So for example, in Wisconsin, we started 8 weeks out with Spanish language TV and radio for the whole state, full program. We knew that we wanted to go big in Wisconsin. We knew how critically important the Latino vote is there. In fact, the Latino vote was the margin of victory in 2018 for the governor's race. And so we worked closely with our allies that we have on our groups on the ground that we have for 10 years. We were in Michigan as well. We were in Pennsylvania as well. And in Pennsylvania, we did a very large Spanish language radio program. And by the way, you know, I'll talk about Spanish language TV and radio. There's a lot of studies that show that this form of communication is extremely effective in reaching Latino voters. One thing I'll say about Pennsylvania is that there was 290,000 Latinos who voted as of the reports, the latest reports that we've seen. 200,100 voted for Biden. And then subtracting the Trump difference of 84,000, there was basically 116,000 votes that Biden got, subtracting the Trump votes of the Latino vote. So when we look at where we are right now in Pennsylvania in terms of the vote difference and how we did everything we could to reach out to the Latino community there, that's, we're especially excited to see those numbers. We also were in North Carolina. We were the only group up on Spanish language radio in Charlotte. And in Raleigh for IE groups, and the only group either IE or coordinated for the presidential in Charlotte. We work with our local partners there as well. And then I'll talk a little bit about Arizona, Nevada, and I'll end with Georgia. In Nevada, people, and you're seeing that now, people were concerned that Nevada is going to be this year's Michigan. No, people aren't paying attention to it enough. Not enough resources are going into it. And we knew that the independent side, the outside groups, were going to have to really show up big to make sure that Nevada was taken care of, because we didn't know how much it was going to be a priority on the coordinated side. So we were there starting week 8, Spanish language TV and radio across the whole state with our partners there as well. And so we're very proud that we made sure that we didn't, take Nevada Latino voters for granted. And we're seeing that those dividends pay off. I mean, 25% of some of the ballots that are being counted now are Latino voters. And then we also in Arizona, we've been in Arizona multiple cycles now, even before other folks called it a battleground. And, it's really especially special for us because of Dolores Huerta. She coined the term "Si se puede." And it started in Arizona. And the way that Si se puede started was that she was in Arizona and she was trying to organize folks there like she had organized in California. And they told her, no, you can't do that here. You can't organize people here like you did in California. No se puede. And she said, si se puede. And that's how the Si se puede chant started. And so to kind of see all of that come together this year, because after all of that organizing to flip Arizona, obviously we know it hasn't been officially called, I don't think yet, but it is looking good. And we saw a lot of the local community, especially after the anti-immigrant legislation SB 1070, come together and organize. And Dolores and PFAW, we have been there so many times. And we were there 8 weeks out running a very full Spanish language radio program with multiple creative based on the latest research and with a lot of our local partners as well. And lastly, I'll just touch base briefly on Georgia. So in Georgia, we were the only ones up on Spanish language media. And we were there with a very substantial Spanish language radio buy. And we are, have been there. We were the first ones to do Spanish language television there in 2014. And we have been very excited about Georgia because we have seen how consistent investment creates results. We've been doing that in Virginia and we helped turn Virginia blue. And we are seeing a very similar Latino population to Virginia in Georgia. And so we're very excited to continue that work in the runoff races for US Senate to hopefully help with the power that we see on the Senate side and continue to engage Latino voters and be leaders in that. And with our local, and with Stacey Abrams, who was part of the work we did when we first started a Latino vote program there and has continually been a part of supportive of this effort. And so we will continue with Georgia and continue to expand our program and try to create these wins with this critical part of the vote.
Thank you so much, Lizet. For those of you joining late or just joining us right now, you are watching People for the American Way, our post-election briefing, and that was just Lizet Ocampo, our political director, talking about the different programs. I know throughout the stream, we have been talking about the importance of the upcoming races in Georgia. So if you feel like you really want to get involved and you want to be part of that, please visit pfaw.org/wingeorgia. Again, that is pfaw.org/wingeorgia. And with that, I'd like to bring our next guest on, Marge Baker, who is the Executive VP for Policy and Program here at People For, and she will talk about where we're going and where we're headed.
Hey,
Marge.
thanks so much, Gina, and thank you all for joining us today. It's so great to be with you. I wanted to take just a minute to go back to Ben's 1, 2, 3s to talk about what we're going to be doing. And because we are People for the American Way and we continue to fight for our values of freedom, opportunity, equality, and justice for all, we have a new 1 and 2, as you know, and our new 1 and 2 is making sure that every person turns out and that every vote is counted in the Georgia runoff election. So you've heard a lot about that. If you're interested in helping us out, there's so many ways you can help. If you go to pfaw.org/wingeorgia, that's going to be really important because as we heard earlier, it'll make a huge, huge difference if we can take those seats and in fact give the Democrats control of the US Senate, which means that we get to deal with the McConnell list of graveyard bills that he has not moved on, as Congressman Raskin talked about. So that's our new 1 and 2. Number 3 is make sure that our votes count. And that is the democracy agenda that you've heard about. Very simply, it's really four parts. But before I get to the democracy agenda, because this is absolutely essential, we have got to get COVID relief done. We have got to have a major COVID relief package. If we don't get it done in a lame duck, it will have to get done immediately in the new Congress. Hopefully it'll get done before that. And then we move on to what I think of as a 4-part democracy agenda. First is passing the national popular vote. And as Ben mentioned, the 2 states where we're really going to focus are Virginia and Nevada. Those are the next 2 states of real opportunity. So 1 is the national popular vote. The second is the slate of democracy reforms we've talked about. HR 1 for the People Act, which has a whole set of campaign finance reforms and voting rights reforms that simply have to be implemented. And along with that package goes HR 4, which is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act to overturn the harm done by the Supreme Court when it gutted the Voting Rights Act in the Shelby County case. And then HR 51, which is the DC statehood bill, which is so extremely important. And really, really notable today, Speaker Pelosi sent out a message to her entire caucus that the first measure that would be taken up by the House in the next Congress is HR 1, is a slate of democracy reforms. So that is huge on our agenda. So that's number 2. Number 3 is we will continue our focus on the courts. We will continue our focus now that we'll have a Biden administration of making sure that we have fair-minded justices committed with a demonstrated record of commitment to civil and human rights nominated for the courts. And we will fight as hard as we possibly can to get that slate of judges and justices confirmed. So courts are going to be part of our agenda. And I think we will also be looking to how do we do a parallel work on these issues in the states as well. So courts are going to be an incredibly important part. And then the 4th part, I would say, of our democracy agenda is working with our right-wing watch team to fight the disinformation and the lies and the conspiracy theories that are really threatening to undermine our democracy. So we want to make sure that we are educating the public about what's going on, setting the context for why this is so critical, and doing what we can to put pressure on those within the social media industry, the companies within this industry who are really continuing to irresponsibly allow conspiracy theories, disinformation, misinformation to spread. So that's kind of our 1, 2, 3. Over the next period of time, you'll be hearing more about it from us. But let me end again by just thanking everybody for all that you've done. I feel really good about where we are, what we've been able to accomplish, and there's no way we would have been able to do that without your help and support. So thank you very much. And onward is what I say.
Thank you so much, Marge. Thank you. And now I'm going to pass this back to the president of People for the American Way, Ben Jealous, to give some closing remarks. And then we will also have some Q&A with our panel. Ben.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Marge. Thank you, Lizet. Thank you, Diallo. And again, thank you to Congressman Raskin. I want to thank each of you for being part of People for the American Way. Each of you for being an American of good conscience, stands up for their fellow American, understands we are all our sisters' keepers, all our brothers' keepers. You heard from Jamie Raskin today why he's optimistic, why these 2 Senate seats we got to win in Georgia are so important. You heard from Marge and from Gina and from me. Just go to pfaw.org/ Win Georgia. You heard from Lizet and Diallo about the groundbreaking work that we're doing. There's two things that really make People for the American Way special amongst the family of American human rights groups, civil rights groups, civil liberties groups. One is that we actually have the courage to endorse, that if you oppose the interests of overwhelming majority of Americans who believe in fair play and doing right, that we will take out ads against you, target you, help to defeat you, as we did with McSally in Arizona and Gardner in Colorado, two senators now have to go find new jobs, and Donald Trump in the White House. The other is that we have been intentionally intersectional from the very beginning, co-founded by Congresswoman Barbara Jordan and Norman Lear, after Brown, after Stonewall, in the midst of the rise of the far right wing in the early 1980s. Next year will be our 40th year. And, well, I just want to thank you again for being part of us. Perhaps the most intersectional leader in our country, in the post-Civil War period, has been Frederick Douglass. You know, when the 15th Amendment was passed, as culmination of his life's work, get freedom for Black people, he noted that women didn't have the vote yet. And so he celebrated the 15th Amendment and said, but I will not cast a ballot until women have the franchise too, the right to vote too. When the 14th Amendment was passed, he gave perhaps his most compelling speech in the post-Civil War era. It's called Our Composite Nationality. And all eyes were on Frederick Douglass, literally. He was the most photographed American in the 19th century. And in that speech, it's a number of really powerful things. One was that we just came through a war to end slavery in the Southeast, and we were not going to stand by and watch y'all slave somebody else in the Southwest, talking about the mistreatment of Chinese and Irish American railroad workers. And then he went on to give perhaps his most profound vision about the future of our country. At the end of that speech, Frederick Douglass reasons every nation has a unique destiny. He explains that a nation's destiny is based on her character. Her character is that nation at its best, not its worst. Even in the depths of the darkness that Donald Trump has brought to our country, I've never questioned our nation's character, in part because that reminder from Frederick Douglass that a nation's character is her at her best, not her worst. And then he explained that every nation's character is ultimately shaped by its geography, and that our geography is unique. We are connected to every people on the planet through borders north and south, and great oceans east and west. And therefore, he reasoned that America's destiny was to be, quote, the most perfect example of the unity and dignity of the human family that the world has ever seen. That's our destiny as a nation. That's what Donald Trump is trying to slow down. That's what the Koch brothers are trying to put the brakes on, but they can't. You cannot stop a nation from its destiny. Our destiny is as it has been on this eve of finally it being clarified that Joe Biden has won, and you can take that to the bank. Our destiny is simply to be the most perfect example of the unity and dignity of the human family that the world has ever seen. That is the work of People for the American Way. That's what you're a part of. And as we head to the Q&A period, I just want to say thank you to each of you for believing unceasingly, pushing, even in the face sometimes of a little bit of doubt, through these last 4 years to get rid of Donald Trump. Yes, we got a big fight. We got a big vote. We have a big fight for the vote in Georgia. We have a big fight for the vote in Georgia. Sign up at pfaw.org/wingeorgia. But tonight and this weekend, please celebrate with your family, being part of a movement, supported Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and fired Donald Trump. Let's celebrate that victory.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Ben. Okay, for those of you joining now or joining late, you are in the People for the American Way post-election briefing. We are now going to head into the Q&A portion of this event. And we have our panelists up. We've had several questions come in already. So Ben, Lizet, or Marge, if any one of you want to take this first question, please feel free to just jump in. The first question comes from Deborah. And her question is, aside from donations, how can a person who doesn't live in Georgia help with the Senate races in January?
Well, you know, for that, I'd like to kick it to Diallo, who can talk about what it's like to be a volunteer in our texting operation. We're going to run a big partisan texting operation to help Georgia. Diallo?
Yeah, I mean, I would simply say that we would love to have folks step up and participate in our texting program that we'll be launching in Georgia. It'll give you an incredible way, even if you're not in Georgia, to be able to reach out to voters, have personalized conversations with them, encouraging them, and also dismantling any barriers that they may have to be able to participate in this election. So we'll be pushing that forward, and we'll be launching that program, and it'll give you an incredible opportunity to really touch folks where they are in a way that they will actually respond to and be motivated to vote in this election.
And this is literally, this texting operation, you can also see as sort of like the hand-to-hand combating of disinformation. People are getting disinformation via social media on their cell phones. We are able to squash that by texting them directly. And then they ask us, well, I thought I couldn't vote because I have unpaid fines and fees. And we say, no, there's plenty of people who have unpaid parking tickets who still go vote. And so that really puts you on the front line of both pushing folks out to the polls, helping convince them who to vote for, because this will be a partisan effort this time, and also squashing the disinformation that's being targeted disproportionately at Black voters, especially younger Black voters in Georgia right now. Again, you can go to pfaw.org/wingeorgia to sign up for that.
Great. Thank you so much, Ben and Diallo, for answering that. We have another question in here from Arlene. Arlene's question is, there are many openly progressive folks, Democrats who live in rural areas that are highly conservative. Many of them now feel afraid for their safety based on the violence Trump incites in his supporters. How do they safely work to make change in their communities? And do you have any advice for how to approach introducing progressive policies in that kind of environment?
Well, you know, Arlene, somebody who lives in Pasadena, Maryland, which is one of the Trumpiest communities in Maryland, there is really no sort of replacing, if you will, the golden rule. You know, treating your neighbors as you would like to be treated, getting to know your neighbors. That's the secret to everything on the local level. When you're talking about your neighbors in a rural area or a semi-rural area like Pasadena, you know, out here in the exurbs, it's just taking the time to get to know your neighbors as people. And it really, when it comes to disinformation, when it comes to conspiracy theories like QAnon, it's that basis of trust with your neighbors that allows you to help lead people out of the darkness and to the light. But it starts with having the compassion, the courage, just the habit of getting to know your neighbors just as your neighbors. And there's always something else to talk about besides politics, or at least before politics. So that would be my encouragement. I would also encourage people just to feel safe. You know, there was a moment when I was a young organizer in Mississippi. This is when Stacey Abrams and I were fighting to stop the governor of Mississippi from turning a Black college into a prison. Byron Dale of Beckwith was on trial, and the Klan made public death threats issued out through the media against the leaders of our protest movement, of which Stacey and I were too. And then Aaron Henry, the longtime leader of the Mississippi NAACP, found me after a sleepless night at a Waffle House and said, Ben, I just came here to see you. He said, I heard you haven't been sleeping well. I said, no, sir. He said, well, you know, somebody should have told you before you arrived in Mississippi that we don't worry about the folks who tell us that they're going to kill us. There's a lot of folks making a lot of bluster, making a lot of threats. The reality was that Aaron Henry had, you know, lived all those decades on the front line of the civil rights movement in Mississippi, been just fine. Your neighbors, odds are going to be just fine. Just encourage them to get out now that the election's over and just talk to their neighbors as people. There's nothing that binds a community closer than the bonds of us, just as human beings beyond politics.
Thank you so much, Ben. We're pretty much out of time, but I want to squeeze in this one more question, and I'd love for Lizet to answer this one. This comes from Stephen. Lizet, given Texas and Florida continues to remain solidly conservative, how do progressives reach out to earn the vote of the Latinx communities in these states?
Love this question. I could obviously talk about the Latino vote forever. I think that a big part of it is Latinos haven't really been a top priority when it comes to the overall democratic and progressive infrastructure. And when I say top priority, I'm talking about, let me give you an example of how the Republicans have reached out to Latinos in Florida. Trump started talking to Latinos. When I say started talking, actual outreach, ads, Latinos, they launched Latinos for Trump 2 years ago. And they had been talking to the Latino community and having events, and the biggest Spanish language television campaign that hit both Florida and other places of the cycle was by Trump. And so I think that we still haven't learned the lesson on our side that these voters need to be prioritized. Part of that, for example, we did a lot of incredible work and started as early as we possibly can, but a lot of support came at the very last minute, which we're very grateful for. But we really need to start earlier and have more of that, more of those resources be year round, but also consistent in reaching out to the Latino community. So there's multiple things. Texas is an interesting example, right? One of the there was a headline that said that Latinos lost Texas for Biden. And I thought that that was really interesting because it was the Rio Grande Valley Latinos. Because if you were to add up the numbers, actually, Trump still would have won Texas, even without that vote. Same thing in Florida. If Latinos in Florida in Miami-Dade County would have voted the same way that they voted for Clinton, which was at very high numbers for Democratic candidates, Trump still would have won Florida. And the reason why is because there was there was much lower than expected or than hoped, I guess, percentage of white voters that supported Biden, both in Florida and in Texas. So for example, in Florida, white voters were coming in at 42%, and it ended up lower than 39%. And that's a big gap of white voter support that the Latino vote essentially for Miami-Dade County was not able to fill the gap, even if they had voted at higher rates and at higher support. I will say that for the most of the country, the more Latino an area was, the higher the Biden support. So in places where there was a large Latino population, the support for Biden of that area was higher than 75%. And so you can see the graphs that are very interesting to see that. So I think that it's a mixed, and sorry, I know this is a long answer. Again, I'm trying to shorten it because I love talking about this topic. But it's two messages that can exist parallel to each other. One, we need to prioritize and take seriously the investments to the Latino community and to reach out and to engage and to have the Latino agenda be a part of our agenda in a key way, because that's how Democrats can reach out to the Latino community. So we need to do better, but at the same time, we did have a lot of wins that Latinos contributed to. Arizona is a perfect example. Obviously, hopefully called soon. Nevada, we talked about Pennsylvania, we talked about Wisconsin, and hopefully Georgia here too. So there's a couple of complex things happening with the Latino vote. We need to have investments, not just the last week, which is what we saw in Texas, in order to move forward. And I think now Texas is getting close to where Arizona was maybe a couple cycles ago, where people are starting to treat it like a battleground state, or hopefully we'll treat it like a battleground state, and then we'll see that investment coming earlier on to actually engage the community.
Great, thank you so much, Lizet. I just want to thank all of our panelists today for just a really great post-election briefing. Our president, Ben Jealous here of People for, Diallo Brooks, our Senior Director of Field Mobilization, Marge Baker, Executive Vice President for Policy and Program, and Lizet Ocampo, our Political Director. So again, if you're looking for ways to get involved and you really feel like you want to help with the Georgia races, we've mentioned it before, please visit pfaw.org/wingeorgia. There are so many different ways for you to get involved between now and January to help win those races.
Gina?
And
Real quick, and even if you don't care about Georgia, you just want to fire Mitch McConnell, that's also a reason to go to pfaw.org/wingeorgia. You may have never gone to Georgia. I mean, you may not be able to name a senator ever from Georgia. I guarantee you, you will like Ossoff and you will love Warnock. He is incredible. But being as it may, you get to help fire Mitch McConnell. I mean, if you've just fired Donald Trump and you're trying to figure out what to give yourself for the new year, let it be firing Mitch McConnell.
amen. Thank you, Ben. I agree with that. Let's fire Mitch McConnell. And again, that's pfaw.org/wingeorgia. I want to give a special shout out again to Uphill Media for helping us stream this event today. And thank you for everyone out there who joined us today to watch this very important post-election briefing. Until next time, hopefully you'll join us again on one of our future events. Thank you and have a great weekend.